there's the Vidyadhara coming out of the serpent again, and the elders with their firebrands whacking the serpent. There's Nanda coming out of the mouth of the serpent. The Supreme Lord Rishikesh then questioned this personality who is standing before him with his head bowed, his brilliantly effulgent body bedecked with golden necklaces. Lord Krishna said, "My dear sir, you appear so wonderful, glowing with such great beauty. Who are you? And why are you forced to assume this terrible body of a snake?" The serpent replied, "I am the well-known Vidyadhara named Sudarshana. I was very opulent and beautiful, and I used to wander freely in all directions in my airplane. Once I saw some homely sages in the lineage of Agastya Muni. Proud of my beauty, I ridiculed them, and because of my sin, they made me assume this lowly form. It was actually for my benefit that those merciful sages cursed me, since now I have been touched by the foot of the Supreme Spiritual Master of all the worlds, and have thus been relieved of all inauspiciousness." Now, mind you, the cowherd men and boys are hearing all this, and they're scratching their heads like, what? Not only who is this person, but why is he speaking these things? It was one of those circumstances where, in this case, indirectly, Krishna is disclosing his divinity. So the cowherd, the Vrajbasis, had opportunities to directly experience Krishna's divinity. And yet it bounced. It just became very quickly eclipsed by their intensity of love. Though it wasn't difficult for Krishna to conceal his identity because of the intensity of their love. They just couldn't see, they couldn't look up to him like persons look up to a worshipable individual. They worshipped who they worshipped. Most of them, like Nanda Maharaj, for example, his worshipable deity was Narayana. But his divinity is being revealed. You are the supreme spiritual master of all the world, and have thus been relieved of all. I have been relieved of all inauspiciousness, my Lord. You destroy all fear for those who, fearing this material world, take shelter of you. By the touch of your feet, I am now freed from the curse of the sages. O destroyer of distress, please let me return to my planet. Huh? Why didn't he want to go back to Godhead? Here's another nice painting. It's actually the same painting that was the initial painting, the initial slide. So the Vidyadhara is arising from the serpent body. O Master of mystic power, O great personality, O Lord of the devotees, I surrender to you. Please command me as you will, O Supreme God, Lord of all lords of the universe, O infallible one. I was immediately freed from the Brahmana's punishment simply by seeing you. There's a lot of commentary on that too. I mean, his purification came in stages. The first purification was his touching the lotus feet of Nanda. I mean, that was a lot of purification, touching the lotus feet of Nanda. I mean, his intention wasn't good, but he still had touched the lotus feet of Nanda. So, lots of benefit and purification. And then, when Nanda called Krishna's name, there's another purification. Just hearing the call of Krishna's name. And then the third was seeing Krishna, because Krishna came. Before Krishna put his foot, he saw Krishna. So purification, purification, purification. And I was immediately freed from the Brahmana's punishment simply by seeing you. Anyone who chants your name purifies all who hear his chanting. Because Nanda was calling Krishna's name. And that was, Shuddhanam. He had the benefit of hearing that pure holy name chanted by Nanda Maharaj. It's interesting. I find it interesting that kind of imperceptibly, unless you're purposely taking notice of these things, there's a mention of the significance of the holy name throughout the Bhagavatam. It starts in the first canto and it goes through the final cantos. But even here in Krishna's pastimes, emphasis is going to his name. Because it's not only in Kali Yuga is the holy name a means of deliverance. We know in all yugas the holy name is a means of deliverance. When it was Satya Yuga and the means is meditation, Dhruva received mantra for mantra meditation. So and so forth. So it's an essential part in any yuga. But in Kali Yuga is especially significant because the other processes are just not effective for various reasons. And that leaves this very simple and easy to practice chanting of the holy name as the primary means, in fact, exclusive means of deliverance for the sage. But chanting of the holy name was understood even during the previous age and previous ages. Chanting of the holy name is very significant. How much more beneficial then is the touch of your feet? Thus, receiving the permission of Lord Krishna, the demigod Sudarshana, now he's called a demigod, but he's not in the heavenly planets. Those upper regions, the Bhuvarloka region, it's a place where, for example, the Gandharvas, the Charanas, the Siddhas, etc., Siddhaloka, they're in that region. So they're not exactly demigods, but they're also referred to demigods because demigods we at least commonly consider to be in the Swarga region. So the demigod Sudarshana circumambulated him, bowed down to offer him homage, and then returned to his heavenly planet. Nanda Maharaj was thus delivered from peril. The inhabitants of Braja were astonished to see the mighty power of Sri Krishna. They then completed their worship of Lord Shiva and returned to Braja, along the way respectfully describing Krishna's powerful acts. And there's a nice painting showing the Vidyadhara is ascending to the heavenly region. And Nanda's still stuck there in his mouth. But he gets out. So where is Vidyadhara Loka? I mean, it may not be a curiosity item for some of you, but it's a curiosity item for me. Like where the Yakshas live and where all these different entities, where are they? So here's a very interesting depiction. And you can't, the letters are really small, so you can't see where everything is. But those upper, so this is the center of one universe. There's the 7 coverings around the outside. And those upper 4 globes, that's Bhuvarloka, Janaloka, Tapaloka, and Brahmaloka. Maharloka, Janaloka, Tapaloka, Brahmaloka. 4. And then below those 4 is Swargaloka, right? And the topmost region of Swargaloka is the topmost part of Swargaloka is Dhruvaloka, or the heavenly planets are just below Dhruvaloka. And the heavenly planets, some of them are listed, and some you're going to see them start to move. So just below, this is Vedic cosmology class 101. Just below Dhruvaloka are the Saptarishis, the planets of the seven sages, and then the heavenly realm. So here's one of the planets zooming around in a clockwise motion around Dhruvaloka, and that one is Saturn. Yeah, that's Saturn. And there's Jupiter and Mars and Mercury and Venus. And then now going down below that, that's the sun and the moon. And notice the moon moves faster, the sun moves slower. And down below that other area, that's Rahu and Ketu, and the Vidyadhara realm. What the chart says is, let's see here, Siddhas, Charanas, Yakshas, and Rakshasas. Rakshasas. So they're in that region also. I mean, Yakshasas get around because sometimes the Rakshasas come to the earthly realm, but they have their realm. They're free to move. The Those who are averse to the supremacy of a personal form of God, that's the nature of impersonalists. And they have different slogans or different ways of thinking. It's not that all impersonalists are one. But other than the abdication or denial of a personal feature of the Supreme. So God and I are one. I am that I am. There's that every time we go to the Detroit Temple, there's that. What's the name of the place? I am what I am temple. What's the name it has on the outside? I am what I am temple. You've seen that thing? On the left side as you're going in. It's been there forever. I don't know if people go there. It is what it is. I am is the name of God. Soham. Soham. I am infinity in whom all arises. I met a college kid one time that was saying like this. I just laughed. But some people say like this. Tattvamasi, thou art that art thou. What this has to do with is, according to Bhaktivinoda Thakur, each of the entities that were liberated by Krishna, in this case Vidyadharas, he wasn't killed, but he didn't have desire. He had no hankering, no aspiration to be in relation to Krishna. He wanted to go back to his Vidyadhara kingdom. No, but when he went back to his Vidyadhara kingdom, he was purified. Something very similar happened to Nalakuvara and Manigriva. They were cursed to stand as trees, and this Vidyadhara was cursed to become a serpent because he was envious. So that's a suitable situation. And a tree, one who stands naked, you can stand naked and become a tree. Prabhupada would often refer to it like that. So when he became freed from the reactions of his offense, what's left? And everything depend. What's left depends on your what's important to you. What are you hankering for behind the contamination hankering? What's that deeper hankering? And if that deeper hankering isn't awakened, then what's your destination? Rescuing the truth of eternal Krishna consciousness, which has been swallowed by impersonalists. Here's Shankaracharya. This is, speaking from Bhaktivinoda Thakur, explaining this, the relieving of Vidyadhara from his curse. In the final analysis, one should worship the Supreme Lord. That he didn't see. He had when Nalakuvara and Manigriva returned, they weren't in the same consciousness. The consciousness they were in before was pride. They were relieved of pride, and so their higher consciousness or their spiritual consciousness was restored. What commentators say about this Sudarshana is he wanted to go back and deliver a pure message of bhakti to his fellow residents of Vidyadhara Loka. Like King Chitraketu, where did he go? In his same body during his lifetime, he went to a Vidyadhara kingdom. He became a king of one of the Vidyadhara realms. But he was in pure devotion. So one can be situated in different places in the universe besides going to Vaikuntha and be in pure consciousness. But when one has that pure consciousness in some other situation, what does one do with it? You worship the Supreme Lord and you engage others in hearing the message of the Supreme Lord. And the Sankirtan of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is meant to do the same, is to help to receive and give. Receive the message of pure devotion from those who are delivering the message of pure devotion, and to give the message of pure devotion, of course, according to our capacity and according to the receptivity of others. And that requires some intelligence and some refinement of time, place, circumstance, how to best do that. But that's what one does. That's the liberated platform, or the pure devotional platform, wherever one is in the universe. Prahlad was doing that in the kingdom of the demons. He ran into little obstacles, but that's what he was doing. And the Vidyadhara, that's what he wanted to do. The commentators say that specifically. So he had great appreciation for what he had received, but there wasn't the opportunity for the intervention of a Vaishnava other than touching the lotus feet of Nanda. It wasn't a nice touching of the lotus feet of Nanda, it was to swallow him. But nonetheless, touching the lotus feet of Nanda, which was purifying, for sure. In various ways, just step back and wrap up this discussion for this evening. In Krishna's pastimes, he's bringing happiness and stimulating rasas for everyone of all descriptions. The pastimes of Krishna are moving and stimulating rasas, particularly the secondary rasas, because the primary rasas, they're steady, sthayi bhava, steady ecstasy of a particular variety. But then different circumstances then stimulate other secondary rasas, and they mix the other secondary rasas, And then the experience of his devotees is they have the opportunity to experience ecstasies of different kinds, with, of course, Krishna at the center, because that's their life. Krishna's at the center. And he just moved from one pastime to the next pastime, to the next pastime, to the next pastime. And it's like the flowing of a river. It's an unending flow. Unending. There's no mention in this pastime of the gopis. This is at an early age in his life, and they're not directly involved in the pastime, but they easily could be if it was. It's different according to different ages. His pastimes move just as a river moves, but it's the emphasis here is with the elders. There's during certain periods of Krishna's maturing, different rasas are particularly at the focus, at the center. The parental rasa is here, and they want to protect Nanda and Krishna to the rescue. Now afterwards, when they go back to Braja, they're singing. It's one of the things that Brijvasis do. They sing. They compose songs about Krishna's activities, and they sing. And then when they get things that like what a wonderful pastimes Krishna has done, and this and that and the other, the whole range of all of his activities. But when they get back, they're going to have this discussion about who is he. Anyways, those kinds of discussions happen from time to time. They don't come to the conclusion that he's the personality of Godhead, although in one case they did. Not exactly, but they came to that conclusion. The pastime, another evening I'll be narrating the pastime of Nanda Maharaj being taken to the abode of Varuna. And what happens in the abode of Varuna, Nanda Maharaj reports back two main things. The opulence of Varuna's abode is just astounding, because it's a heavenly realm with heavenly opulence, because he's a demigod. And the second was Varuna, this opulent demigod, was worshipping my son and saying these things. So who is he? So they had a little conference amongst the elders, and they reached the conclusion, all these other things and plus this thing, maybe he's the personality of Godhead, just maybe. And if he is, maybe he'll show us his eternal abode, because one day we may be able to go to his eternal abode, not recognizing they're already in his eternal abode, because they don't see themselves that way. And they don't say that to Krishna, but Krishna knows, because he's in their hearts. He knows what their desires are. So then Krishna decides he wants to reciprocate with their desire. So he's going to show them the spiritual world. It's right in that same chapter. So during a particular month, a particular day of the month, he takes to the same place where Akura saw what Akura saw, and they bathe in the river Jamuna, and Krishna then lifts them out of the river Jamuna, and they see the spiritual world. And not only do they see the spiritual world, they see Krishna and themselves in the spiritual world. Commentary says they don't see the other Vrijvasis, they just see themselves. And they see the personified Vedas offering prayers to Krishna. And they're like, phew. And then the curtain of Yogamaya closes and they forget everything. But Krishna was reciprocating with their desires. Now, normally they're not desiring to, to see the spiritual world or to see who God is, or something, in the same way that others might. They have a happy life, and they're not looking for something other than their happy life. But curiosity is just a natural human trait, and so they sometimes become curious. And depending, Krishna reciprocates, and then the flow of the river keeps moving, and they forget everything, and they go back to their homes. It's like nothing happened. Then the forgetfulness of what Krishna reveals, or like this here, this Vidyadhara, is a celestial being. His brilliant, like the sun, coming out of the body of this serpent with ornaments and this and that. Very eloquent, very elegant, very beautiful, very effulgent, speaking to Krishna as the personality of Godhead, and they're experiencing the whole thing. And it doesn't stick because their love is so intense. So in many cases, Krishna doesn't show his divinity. He shows something just the opposite. One of those times when they're wondering who Krishna is, and some of the elders say he's God. And those of you who have been on yatras with Dinabandhu, it's one of his favorite stories. He plays the role of Nanda Maharaj and just starts laughing and whole body laugh. Nanda says, he is God. He's constantly stealing. And when there's some lightning and thunder, he comes crawling under my dhoti and shivering and trembling. And, he regularly will cry, and he seems so naughty, and you say he's God? Oh, he just laughs it off. Because of it's the intensity, the nature of their intensity of their love for Krishna. Even when he shows, they can't see. Even when they're curious and he reciprocates with their curiosity and he shows them, they can't see. They can see, then they forget. It's a different kind of yogamaya. Yogamaya samavrata is the external reflection of yogamaya as mahamaya. Naham prakasha sarvasya yogamaya samavrata mudho yam nabijanati. That's the external reflection of yogamaya. But yogamaya causes one to forget, and allows, in the case of the Brijvasis, which, by hearing these pastimes, are becoming acquainted with life in Vrindavan. And there's potencies in these narrations that cleanse and draw us to that mood of love, just by hearing. Even, whatever one's age or whatever one's culture or background, doesn't matter. There's spiritual potency in these narrations. And especially during the month of Kartik, right? Nice to hear. So let's see if there's some discussion. Simple chapter from Krishna's pastimes.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. Thank you very much for wonderful class. Um, Maharaj, I was just contemplating on your point that very rare occasion Brajvasi got a glimpse that actually Supreme Personality of God. Maharaj, my question is little related to Sharad Purnima we recently celebrated, and in Gopi Geet there are some verses where gopis say that he is Supreme Personality of Godhead. So Maharaj, I was having hard time understanding that it is like they never treated Krishna as Supreme Personality of Godhead. But in Gopi Geet, it's explicitly mentioned that he's a deliverer of everything, and in that uh, special uh, what do you call it movement, the whole time they praised him as they they understood that he's a Supreme Personality of God. At the same time, they were in a conjugal rasa with him. So how would how would you understand that?
How do you understand it?
I mean, they were treating him as Supreme Personality of Godhead, or they are treating him, um, their beloved.
You're re-expressing the uncertainty or the parent conflict. So I'm asking, how do you look at that? Besides scratching your head, how do you look at it?
Uh, they were in Madhuri Ras, but same time they were also treating him as Supreme Personality of Godhead. So
So
I
that's the
could,
conflict. So
yeah,
how do you in your thought processes, how do you address that conflict?
they were treating him as Personality of Godhead, Supreme Personality, because that's what I understood. That's what I relate to him.
Well, you're not addressing the conflict then. They
Yeah,
see him as the personality of Godhead with whom they have a conjugal relation. That's what you're saying?
yeah.
How is that possible? Which is what your question is. Let's say, why is it that the goddess of fortune could not enter the rasa dance? Because she sees herself as the goddess of fortune. And the mood of those engaged in rasa dance with Krishna is not like that. It's a different mood. We discussed this a little bit in the morning classes with Shiva, the protector of the Dham, Kshetrapal Shiva. He wants to, it's a long narration, but he wants to join the rasa dance and he can't join the rasa dance. But he's allowed to join the rasa dance if he becomes a gopi or in a female form. But the goddess of fortune is in a female form. But he left his identity as Lord Shiva, but goddess of fortune couldn't leave her identity as the goddess of fortune. He accepted a female form, and he was standing guard at the rasa dance. Right? You with me? And Narada also, there's different um, scriptures and different versions of how this happened. But at Kusum Sarovar, Vrinda Devi had him dip into the Kusum Sarovar, and he came out as Naradi, and he was able to see the rasa dance. Doesn't describe, what way he participated, if at all, but he was able to see the rasa dance. So Narada was able to see the rasa dance in the form of a gopi, but he's a Vaikunthavasi, as is the goddess of fortune. But so there has to be some transformation. There has to be some transformation of not only a female form, but the mood of the gopis. Otherwise, one cannot enter. And the mood of the gopis is they don't see him as the personality of Godhead. Those outside of Vrindavan may see him as the personality of Godhead. His queens see him as the personality of Godhead, and they're married to him, and they have children, but they see him as the personality of Godhead, but they're beloved. But in Vrindavan, they don't see like that. Now, let's go to this pastime that we just read, where Nanda is saying to Dhruva, to Krishna, please protect me. I'm taking shelter of you. And that's a father to a son, and he's a little boy. So it's possible, even for Nanda Maharaj or for the gopis, to have some partial understanding or partial recognition or a sense of divinity, but it's not an enduring one. That's I'd like to take a look at what those verses say, what our acharyas say about what the gopis say about Krishna being the personality of Godhead, or speak of his divinity. I'd want to take a look at what our acharyas say, to answer your question properly. But certainly there can be moments, just like there's moments that go the other direction. For Balaram, who's omniscient, to faint when he sees Krishna in the mouth of Bakasura. So Yogamaya can act in different ways to enhance the pastime. And Yogamaya moves this way and Yogamaya moves that way to enhance the pastime. So there can be some explanation like that. But, I'm reasonably sure that our acharyas commented on what you just asked. So if you don't mind, rather than making me look for where the gopis say that in Gopi Geet, you arrange to find out my email address and send me those passages, and I'll look and see what our acharyas have to say, and I'll let you know. Something to do with the movements of the Yogamaya potency that enhances the pastime somehow. And it's not a steady situation. It's a temporary situation that adds a certain flavor or joy, ecstasy to their pastime. Anything online?
So this question is from the previous evening's class. You mentioned about Kaliya, like in Brihad Bhagavatamrita, Kaliya returns for a second time after the
I'm listening.
First pastime. So these pastimes, I was just wanting to know, they were revealed in the meditations of our acharyas, or how was it?
Well, they're revealed in the hearts. You could say meditation, but revealed in the hearts.
Sure. That was my question.
That is it? Okay.
Hare Krishna. Maharaj, this is related to yesterday morning's class, where you had shared about how Shravananda Prabhu had given the mercy to this evil person who had killed 600 plus devotees, and he became a devotee. So we are always hearing that anybody who's envious of devotees or troubling devotees, the Lord is not favorable to them. So I'm surprised how he got this favor, and just wanting to know more about this,
Well,
Maharaj.
it's unique. It's the exception. It's not the rule. But but great personalities have uh, power, and they may, for whatever the reason, display that power of mercy to persons who are undeserving of their mercy. And their mercy is so powerful that even the most awful persons can become relieved. And it has to do with the power of the mercy of those representatives of Krishna. It happens. It's not. It's the exception. It's not the rule. If the mercy of the devotee goes to a bad person, the bad person can be relieved of their obstacles. One has to be very powerful to be able to draw Krishna's mercy to a person who's so bad. Powerful souls can do like that, and the rest of us can't.
Thank you, Maharaj. Anywhere, any source that I can read more details about this particular incident?
Uh, no, this particular incident. I mean, yeah. One place is a book called Prem Vilas by Nityananda Das. Nityananda Das is a disciple of Janava, and he wrote Prem Vilas, which includes descriptions of the three who were the next in line after Jiva Goswami and their lives. So that's one place where you're likely to find something more. Then it doesn't have the same reliability as the writings of the six Goswamis, for example. But you could find something more there, but it's not as reliable. Satyaraj wrote a book, you know, and you may find that in his writings also. The three, Shamananda, Srinivas, Narottam. And his readership is scholars. Because regularly in his writings he'll refer to this professor and that professor, and they opine these things and those things. He was catering to that audience. He was targeting that audience, largely. And so there are things in his writings that are, meant for scholars and academic circle, and not so much for the devotee circle. He doesn't have that same, sense of who his reader is, and the criterion that his reader is looking for in accepting what the author writes. You follow what I'm saying?
Yes,
Like Jiva Goswami was writing for a very, very, very scholarly audience. And Gopi Pranadhana was similarly writing in defense of Jiva Goswami to a very scholarly audience. And that's why, for some people, it's really hard reading to read the Sandarbhas of Jiva Goswami, because the audience is an elite audience. They understand things that are non, even a well-educated person today is not educated like people that were educated during Jiva Goswami's times. Their acumen, that grasp of the subject matter of the Vedas and references and subtle points, they just, it's not the training anymore. So, you're back to your question where you can read more on this particular exchange. But it's often said about that generation that followed the six Goswamis and went here and there throughout the land, you know, in West Bengal and Orissa and other parts of India, that they did these miraculous things of people that were fallen and delivering them. A very prominent one was Veer Hambir. He was a king, but he was also he was a robber king. He was bad.
Thank you, Maharaj.
No, Magari the hunter and Narada. So there are special cases like that. Anything else? Yeah.
Maharaj, one more question. This was with the Dhenukasura pastime. You had mentioned that the other Gopa boys also had the same strength as Krishna. But
That's mentioned in several places because they're his intimate associates. They had Shakti invested in them just by being dear to Krishna. They weren't ordinary. They were exceptional little cowherd boys. They didn't have Krishna's powers. They had powers like Krishna's. They were exceptional. Like mystic yogis, they can have mystic powers, but they're not the master of all mystic powers. Okay, looks like we're done. Yes? Thank you very much. Prabhupada ki Jai.